All right, we are getting close to the end of the book of Judges. We are left our class on a, shall we say, sour note last time. Not because of anything said in here, but simply what was in the text that we were reading about last time, kind of to catch us up. Maybe you weren't here for that. A man had a concubine. She left him, played the harlot, it said, went home to her father's house. After 4 months, he finally went and got her, and after an interaction between her dad and him staying on for several days that he didn't intend to, he finally leaves, and they come and stay in a city, and nobody would take them in the city. And as you recall, an older man came in who was from kind of the same area they were, and asked them what they were doing sleeping in the city square, and they told him, and he said, "You come stay in my house." And you remember the echoes of Sodom and Gomorrah. The men of the town came in and pounded on the door, saying they wanted the man to be brought out so that they could have carnal relations with him, and they wouldn't be deterred. And finally they gave the concubine instead, and they took her out and essentially killed her overnight, and they found her on the doorstep the next morning. And then after he had gone, we get down to verse 29, and this is what left the sour taste in our mouth last week, as so many texts and Judges do. When he entered his house, he took a knife, laid hold of his concubine, divided her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. And so it was that all who saw it said, "No such deed has been done or seen from the day that the children of Israel came up from the land of Egypt until this day. Consider it, confer, and speak up." And so, again, we quit there because our time was out, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that this morning and kind of think about what was going on here. Obviously, I don't know if there are words, I'm sure there are words to describe this and the emotions that it brings to you and the feeling that it brings to you, but this is an ugly, ugly, ugly scene. And you can imagine all of Israel receiving a body part, not from an animal for a call to war or something like that, but from a human being sent with the story of this is what happens. And so everyone who saw it there said, "No such deed has been done or seen from the day that the children of Israel came up from the land of Egypt until this day." We haven't seen anything like this. This is completely new to us. It's out of the ordinary to us. It's something we probably haven't even thought about having something like this happen. And since we've read the book of Judges, it's a surprise to us, I think we would say. If you had never read it before, you get to this and think, wow. But that's the whole point of the book of Judges, I think. We see Israel at its absolute lowest. And this being kind of the last couple of chapters in the book of Judges, kind of the last few chapters since we started chapter 17 onward, which is kind of the charges leveled against Israel. We just see what an evil place Israel had become because they had turned their back on God and weren't following him in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And we'll get to the last verse of Judges, which I think summarizes it all, and we'll get to that hopefully this morning and talk a little bit more about that. Glenn?
Are we sure she was dead or just passed out from abuse that she was dead?
The inference is she was dead. If she wasn't dead, then it brings up the question, did she die on the way to wherever he cut her up, or did she, and this makes it even worse, was she still alive when he cut her up? I kind of think she was probably dead already because she didn't respond to him. I don't know. But that, either way, that would make it even more gruesome than it already was. But, that would be my take on it. Just my opinion for what it's worth, and that's about 12 cents. Any other thoughts, comments before we jump into this? All right. So, land of Israel said, "Consider it, confer, and speak up." And I think we made this comment last week, that no matter how bad things are in Israel or anywhere, there can always be that one thing that happens that brings everybody up short and says, wait a minute, we've crossed a line. Now Israel crossed the line way long ago. And so, but this narrative is so gruesome and so awful that we mentioned last time that maybe that's what it took for Israel to actually think about what was going on in their country and what was going on in their nation, and to realize, wow, look where we are, and we haven't been this place since we were in Egypt. That's how long it's been. We're talking hundreds of years have passed since that time. And so it's an awful, gruesome story in the Bible. I think our last comment was, like I usually do, said, think about that till next week. And then I said, no, wait a minute, don't think about that till next week. We'll talk about it next week, because nobody needs to think about that during the week. And that's how awful this particular narrative is. Chapter 20. So all the children of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, as well as the land of Gilead, and the congregation gathered together as one man before the Lord at Mizpah. And the leaders of all the people, all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew sword. Now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. And the children of Israel said, tell us, how did this wicked deed happen? And so all of Israel comes together. And the writer of this points out that they had 400,000 foot soldiers who drew swords. I think in literature they call that foreshadowing about what's about to take place. Because it's about to get ugly. It's about to get, well, civil war is going to break out against Benjamin from all the tribes of Israel in this event. So how did this wicked deed happen? And so they're, I guess we would say, doing their due diligence. Let's figure this out. Let's know what happened. Before we do anything, let's confer and let's figure it out, and then let's decide how we ought to respond to that. I might mention there, they came together as one man before the Lord at Mizpah. And Mizpah seems to be a gathering place at critical times in the history of the nation of Israel. There's a map. First of all, there are about 6 different Mizpahs mentioned in the Bible, and so we don't know for sure exactly which one this is, but this is kind of the closest one to where all this is going on, so that's why this map points out Mizpah right there. You can notice where it is on the little map in the inset down below. Bethel is there, Ophrah, Gilgal, Jerusalem would be to the south, Bethlehem is on there. I know you can't read the small letters. But that gives you an idea of maybe where Israel had gathered together for this. So what's the significance of Mizpah and why was it? We first hear of Mizpah in Genesis 31 and verse 49. That's where Jacob and Laban made peace. And basically said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we're absent from each other. It's what Jacob and Laban said to each other. So that's where Mizpah comes to the forefront in our biblical narrative. Is in that encounter. You remember the story. We won't go into it much this morning. Jacob snuck out and left, and his wife took the household gods, and Laban followed, and there was a little bit of a tense moment there until they figured out how to deal with each other, made a covenant with each other, and all of that. But that happened in Mizpah, so it was a significant place of memory, and so it seems like Israel kept going back there, Joshua 11, in Joshua 11, mainly it's mentioned in relationship to territory. It's not, doesn't talk about anything that happened there. Joshua 11:3, the Hivites below Mount Hermon in the land of Mizpah is what it says. So it's more geography than anything in the book of Joshua. In Joshua 11 and verse 8, the valley of Mizpah is where one of the battles occurred there, and so it's mentioned there. Again, Joshua 13, 15, 18, all of that. In Judges 10, which backs up in the book we're studying now, the people of Ammon gathered together and camped in Gilgal, and the children of Israel assembled together and camped in Mizpah. And so that's, again, where another battle took place in the book of Judges. Judges 11, Mizpah is also the home of Jephthah. And you remember Jephthah made his vow that whatever comes out of my house, if we're victorious, I will offer to the Lord. And what came out of his house? His daughter. And so we talked about that. And again, what a difficult, troubling story, because we have trouble thinking that they did to her what Jephthah vowed, but at the same time, the text seems to indicate that happened to them. And of course, Judges 20, where we are now, they came out together in Mizpah. Judges 21, the men of Israel swore an oath in Mizpah, saying, "None of us shall give his daughter to Benjamin as a wife." That's coming in the next chapter that we're going to get to. In 1 Samuel 7, Israel again gathers at Mizpah. Samuel has everybody come to Mizpah to pray to the Lord for them what was going on there. It was at Mizpah where Saul was chosen to be the first king of the nation of Israel. And so it's a significant biblical place. It's mentioned again in 1 Kings chapter 15, 2 Kings chapter 25, again, just as a geographic place where something happened that we won't get into this morning. So Mizpah is a significant place, and it seems like for whatever reason, that's where Israel would come together, likely because of its special place, because of what happened with Jacob and Laban, and that was a place where there was a memorial. The name Mizpah means overlook or watchtower, and so that may have something to do with it. It was the stronghold, and so they came to the stronghold there to discuss Israel's business. So anyway, that's what we know about Mizpah. So the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, "My concubine and I went into Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin, to spend the night. And the men of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house at night because of me. They intended to kill me, but instead they ravished my concubine so that she died. And I took hold of my concubine, cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout all the territory of the inheritance of Israel, because they committed lewdness and outrage in Israel. Look, all of you are children of Israel. Give your advice and counsel here." Move my paper. "Here and now." And so the Levite is there. He's explaining what he did and why he did it. And he's saying, in essence, what are we going to do about this? What's the plan for this? So all the people arose as one man. What does that mean? Arose as one man. United. When was the last time Israel was united? Certainly not in the book of Judges, even back in the days of Deborah and Barak. When Israel was called to war, Dan and others didn't come for that, and so Israel hadn't been united for a long, long time. But all the people arose as one man, saying, "None of us will go to his tent, nor will any turn back to his house. But now this is the thing which we will do to Gibeah. We will rise up against it by lot. We will take 10 men out of every 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, 100 out of every 1,000, and 1,000 out of every 10,000, to make provision for the people when they come to Gibeah and Benjamin, that they may repay all the violence that they have done in Israel." And so all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, united together as one man. And so not only are they preparing for battle, remember the previous verse, 400,000 foot soldiers, 400,000 men who could draw swords, so we've got a huge army. And then these people, 10 out of every 100, 100 out of 1,000, and so on and so forth. These are ones providing provisions. They're the ones supporting the army, because armies march on their stomach, or so I'm told, and so they had to eat, they had to have supplies, they had to have all of that. And so they are gearing up for a major conflict with Gibeah. And it seems like that the message here of the writer of the book of Judges is, look, Israel's finally come together, united together as one man. And they're going to repel this evil out of Israel. And so that's setting the stage for what I'm going to read in the next few verses. "Then the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribes of Benjamin, saying, What is this wickedness that has occurred among you? Now therefore deliver up the men, the perverted men who were in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and remove the evil from Israel." That term perverted there, remember last week we talked about the phrase the sons of Belial. Same word used there in verse 13. So sons of evil, perverted. You can't say anything worse about them because they're just as bad as they can be. "That we may put them to death and remove the evil from Israel. But the children of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brethren, the children of Israel. Instead, the children of Benjamin gathered together from their cities in Gibeah to go to battle against the children of Israel." What does that tell you about Benjamin? Dave?
Yeah, I kind of wonder what part of this played into perverted men, but true and Benjamites, there was a homosexual tendency there, but it wasn't homosexual, it ravished his concubine, you know. It was someone else, you know, homosexual, unattractive women.
Okay.
There seems, it just seems to me that they're all united, but there doesn't seem to be a
Okay.
righteous element.
Okay. Well, yeah, but we're seeing them come together to do something against this evil. That's not saying that they had their come to Jesus moment. Now they were coming back to God. Okay. That's not what's going on here in this particular narrative. They are still evil as they were, and all that's still going on. But this is the one thing that kind of united them together against Benjamin. And Benjamin, for whatever reason, rather than saying, okay, yeah, we'll allow you to do to Gibeah what you need to do, they decided, no, we're going to fight. We're not going to accept that. We're going to embrace the evil that happened in our country and fight against you because you're coming against us to fight against us because of that. And again, the text doesn't say that, so we're making inference as to what's going on in the mind of the Benjamites. It might have been just sheer pride. How dare you come against your brethren? How dare you? Steve.
Going back a few chapters, correct me if I'm wrong, but did the Levite really say that they were going to, was he worried that they were going to kill him? Because it doesn't seem like they really wanted to kill him, they just wanted let them have.
Yeah, I think what they wanted was spend the night with him and have their way with him and all that carnal thing you can imagine in your mind. So now, the fact that they did that to the concubine, would he have been the recipient of that same, would they have maybe killed him in the process? Could be. I don't know. But their desire for him was for the sexual part of it. It's what they were wanting from it. So, go ahead, brother.
I don't want to get ahead of it, but it's interesting that they weren't actually going against the entire city of Gibeah. They just wanted the men that had committed this deed.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to give them up.
Yeah, and that's an important point. They weren't giving up. Israel was wanting the perverted men who had done this. Deliver up the men, the perverted men who were in Gibeah, that we may put them to death. That's what Israel wanted. Give us the men, we take care of this, we go home, everything's fine. But that's not how Benjamin took it. They weren't, for whatever reason, willing to give them up. Janelle?
Could this have happened in any of the other tribes besides Benjamin? Or was it just with how the Benjaminites had done? Is it where they had sent to? By the way, in verse 5 there, it says that the concubine was dead.
Okay.
So that
Kind of clears that up, doesn't it? Yeah.
that helped a little.
Yeah, helped a little. Yeah, like anything helps reading the story. But
And in a way, you could maybe draw the analogy that, say, Colorado got horrible, and the whole rest of the United States was going to come and do something bad in Colorado and take us out. So I don't know whether that helps or complicates.
Yeah, and so again, whether Benjamin said, no, we're not going to allow this to happen in our territory because this is our place, these are our people, or whether they were to the point in their own psyche where they didn't see why this was an issue. Maybe this was going on more than what we have the record of, and maybe, as you suggested, maybe more in Israel than just in Benjamin. We just don't know because we don't have that narrative. Yes, sir?
I just would like to suggest that one of the things that in Judges seems to provide a theme for the whole book is Judges 2:10 about after Joshua there arose a generation that did not know the Lord.
Yep.
And did not know the work that he had done for them in bringing them out of Israel.
Yep.
And you see this cycle that, they drift away from the Lord and then they come back because the Lord brings the judgment on them and stuff. And this, the whole sordid episode here, from start to finish, just seems to illustrate what even with the people of God, when they walk away from the Lord, the depths that they will sink to, just like you mentioned before.
Yeah.
What happened to Sodom and Gomorrah is about to happen to Benjamin, not to get too far ahead, but it's about to happen to Benjamin.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we've pointed this out, and again, flip ahead to the last verse of the book of Judges, verse 25, chapter 21. In those days there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And that, again, we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get there. That summarizes everything we're talking about in the book of Judges. Dave?
And this whole sordid story begins with the same statement.
Yeah, it does.
It's like the author of the book of Judges and say, here's how bad it can get.
Yeah.
And there doesn't seem to be any righteous in the whole thing.
No. Yeah. It's you know, with the exception of the few judges who seem to rise above everything else, it's just awful. I've told this illustration before, but going through preacher training school, one of our professors always said, he said, tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you're going to tell them, or tell them, and then tell them what you've told us. Judges follows that, doesn't it? He tells them, I'm going to tell you it was evil, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. He tells them how that happened, and then he closes the book out with that. That was, you know, we could have saved ourselves a lot of time by just looking at that one verse and said, okay, that's enough. Because that summarizes everything we've dealt with in Israel. Amy?
My question is, so all of Israel except for the Benjamites arose because the man with the concubine was these men were going to try to have sex with him, or do they rise and do they at the outrage, or were they outraged at what they did to the lady?
Okay. And
or was it both?
And that's a good question. What was it was it the whole totality of this event that outraged Israel? Was it the Sodom and Gomorrah part of it, wanting to come in and take the man? Was that what outraged them? Was it outraged them that somebody got a left arm from this woman and she was cut up? Was that what outraged them? And my answer to that is I don't know. I don't know what it was that finally motivated them, whether it was the whole deal or part of it. But whatever it was, got under their skin enough that they're willing to do something about that at this point in time. And from their cities at that time, the children of Benjamin numbered 26,000 men who drew the sword beside the inhabitants of Gibeah, who numbered 700 select men. And among all this people were 700 select men who were left-handed. Everyone could sling a stone at a hair's breadth and not miss. Now besides Benjamin, the men of Israel numbered 400,000 who drew the sword, and all of these were men of war. All right, stopping there, predict the outcome of the battle. Forget what you've read in the rest of the chapter. Who's going to win this?
These bad dudes.
Yeah, these bad dudes. But which group of bad dudes? Well, 400,000. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Just strictly from the numbers, they had 400,000 versus the 26,700 that they had from Benjamin. This is going to be a cakewalk for the rest of Israel. But you've read the story, so you know that's not quite how all this works out in the next few verses. Then the children of Israel arose and went up to the house of God to inquire of God. And again, where was the house of God at this time? Shiloh. That's where the tabernacle was. It was at Shiloh. And so, again, glimpses of goodness are coming out of this particular narrative. They all finally said, okay, enough is enough. Let's deal with this. But then they took that extra step in verse 18 and they went back to Shiloh. And they went to the house of God and they talked to God about this. And just notice the wording here, because we'll come back to this. Which of us shall go up first to battle against the children of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah first. So the children of Israel rose in the morning and camped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin. And the men of Israel put themselves in battle array to fight against them at Gibeah. And the children of Benjamin came out of Gibeah on that day and cut down to the ground 22,000 men of Israel. Wait a minute. That's not supposed to be how it worked out. Excuse me. I have a frog in my throat this morning. So, something I notice here, and maybe I'm making too much of it, but what question did they ask of God when they got to the house of God? Who goes first? What might have been a better question to ask? Should we do it? Or what do you suggest we do about this situation? But that doesn't seem to be the question they ask. They've made up their mind, this is what we're going to do. So they go to God at Mizpah to get his approval of that. Who should go up first? And God answers them, we'll send Judah first. And it's, again, trying to think outside the box here, makes me wonder if God is trying to teach them a lesson about this whole circumstance, in that, okay, you've come back. This is an awful thing that's happened. Yeah, we need to do something about that. We need to fix this. But the proper course of action would better have been, you come to Shiloh, you ask me, what do we do about this? And maybe God would have had a different answer. Maybe God would have, produced another Sodom and Gomorrah. But that's not what Israel asked of him. And again, like I said, I'm just thinking outside the box here, not trying to make any point, but it seems interesting that their first question wasn't, should we go, but who goes first? And Judah gets the nod from that, and 22,000 men of Israel died. And you read through that and think, well, why did God do that? Why did God allow 22,000 of these evil men to die, or of these men to die, when the Benjamites, who did all this evil stuff, didn't seem to have any losses? What do you think? Again.
Neither side was all that righteous.
Okay, what?
Neither side
was righteous? Dave?
Well, I'm jumping ahead, but the third time the charm was because they fasted and offered sacrifices, and it still leaves a big question mark in my head. I mean, why was that necessary?
Yeah. And again, this brings us back to our discussion we've had all throughout Judges. There's so much questions we would like answered. Dave came over to me while I was messing with the computer back there and said, I'm looking forward to you putting all this to bed, giving all the answers and having us all straightened out at this. And my response to him, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because I don't know what the answers to this stuff is per se, because Israel, when things get so bad, there is just no rational reasoning to it. And that's what's happening in Israel, I think. They're just so bad, none of it makes sense, because it's so far from what is normal and righteous and moral that we know people aren't thinking correctly. And again, they're doing what they think's right rather than what God says right. Oh, you had a comment.
Well, I was thinking it's just like when we sin. If we sin against God, we don't, confess and repent, then we set ourselves against God. We're not blessed. Mm-hmm. These people have been separated from Him for a long time, and they finally realized that they had to get their act together. So when the first group was killed, they wept and they said, hey, what's going on here? We didn't win the battle. God was basically saying, you know what, I punished those who I love. So you need to come to your senses, confess, repent, and then I'll be with you.
Okay, and let's keep going, because that seems to, come on, there it goes. And the people, that is the men of Israel, encouraged themselves. Did I skip one there? Yeah, 18. Then the children of Israel rose and went to the house of God to inquire of God. Oh, no, that's the same one, isn't it? Went up and cut down to 20,000 men. Okay, let's go on. And the people, that is the men of Israel, encouraged themselves again and formed the battle line to the place where they had put themselves in array on the first day. The children of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and asked counsel of the Lord, saying, shall I draw near for the battle against the children of my brother Benjamin? And the Lord said, go up against him. Okay, so they asked him the first time, send Judah first. Ask him the second time, go up against him. And they wept before the Lord until evening, before they asked that. So the children of Israel approached the children of Benjamin on the second day, and Benjamin went out against them from Gibeah on the second day and cut down to ground 18,000 more of the children of Israel, all those who drew swords. So God said, send Judah up, and we lost over 20,000. Now we're losing another 18,000 in the second time around, and yet God has said, go do this.
But they didn't ask for his help.
Okay. Didn't ask for his help. Yeah, and let's keep reading, because this gets, I think, a little more clear. Then all the children of Israel, that is, all people, went up to the house of God and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening, and they offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. First question was, who goes up first? Second question, shall we go up against them again? Third time they came before God, it's a whole different ballgame, isn't it? They fasted. They offered burnt offerings. They offered peace offerings before the Lord. Makes you wonder how many of them had been offering sin offerings and peace offerings at Shiloh before this. And my guess would be probably not very many, because they were so enthralled with the Baals and the Asherahs and doing all of that stuff, that maybe this is something they hadn't been doing. So the children of Israel inquired of the Lord, and puts in the parentheses there, the author, the Ark of the Covenant of God was there in those days, and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before it in those days, saying, shall I yet go out to battle against the children of my brother Benjamin, or shall I cease? And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hands. And so, again, just following this progression, it seems to me that God is using this as a teaching moment. I mean, the teaching moment lost over 20,000 and 18,000 warriors to get there. But Israel made up their mind, we are going to go up against Benjamin. Who do we send first? Everyone did what was right in their own sight. They'd already made up their minds. We're going. They lost. Went back again. Shall we go up this time? And God said, go ahead and go up. And this time, though, there's more of a pause, reverence, supplication to God. And it's at that point that God said, I will deliver them into your hand. And then Israel set men in ambush all around Gibeah. And the children of Israel went up against the children of Benjamin on the third day and put themselves in battle array against Gibeah, as at the other times. So the children of Benjamin went out against the people, and they were drawn away from the city. They began to strike down and kill some of the people, as at the other times in the highways, one of which goes up to Bethel and the other to Gibeah, and in the field about 30 men of Israel. And the children of Benjamin said, they are defeated before us as at first. But the children of Israel said, let us flee and draw them away from the cities to the highways. And so all the men of Israel rose from their place and put themselves in battle array at Baal Tamar. Notice the name of the place, Baal Tamar. Anyway, just a side note there. Then Israel's men in ambush burst forth from their positions in the plain of Geba, and 10,000 select men from all of Israel came against Gibeah, and the battle was fierce. But the Benjamites did not know that disaster was upon them. The Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel, and the children of Israel destroyed that day 25,100 Benjamites, all those who drew sword. And so the tides have changed, and God is with them, shall we say, or at least approving of this, or is behind this, because now Israel is victorious. So the children of Benjamin saw that they were defeated. The men of Israel had given ground to the Benjamites because they relied on the men in ambush, whom they had set against Gibeah. And the men in ambush quickly rushed upon Gibeah. The men in ambush spread out and struck the whole city with the edge of the sword. Now the appointed signal between the men of Israel and the men in ambush was that they would make a great cloud of smoke rise up from the city, whereupon the men of Israel would turn in battle. Now Benjamin had begun to strike and kill about 30 men of Israel, for they said, surely they are defeated before us, as in the first battle. But when the cloud began to arise from the city in a column of smoke, the Benjamites looked behind them, and there was the whole city going up in smoke to heaven. And then when the men of Israel turned back, the men of Benjamin panicked, for they saw that disaster had come upon them. And therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel in the direction of the wilderness. But the battle overtook them, and whoever came out of the cities they destroyed in their midst. And so, a little strategic planning, a little subterfuge, and Israel, as being victorious, drew the Benjamites out to their ultimate ruin. They surrounded the Benjamites, chased them, and easily trampled them down as far as the front of Gibeah toward the east. And 18,000 men of Benjamin fell, all these men of valor. And they turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and they cut down 5,000 of them on the highways. And then they pursued them relentlessly up to Gittim, and killed 2,000 more of them. So all who fell of Benjamin that day were 25,000 men who drew the sword, and all of these were men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness and the rock of Rimmon, and they stayed in the rock of Rimmon for 4 months. And the men of Israel turned back against the children of Benjamin and struck them down with the edge of the sword. From every city, men and beast, all who were found, and they set fire to all those cities they came to. And so that that's basically into the battle. We'll stop there because the bell's going to ring here in a minute. And chapter 21 takes us kind of a slightly different direction. But so all this fierce battle takes place. And Israel is not victorious until after they got up to Shiloh and actually asked God properly about what they should be doing. Glenn?
Wasn't Phineas, he was a high priest before they entered into the land?
Yeah, so we have to assume that namesake, he was called Phinehas because of, paternal, rather than being the same Phinehas, obviously, that we read about much earlier in the text, I would think. All right? All right, anything else real quick? We're out of time. All right, we'll pick up there, Lord willing, verse 1 of chapter 21. Thank you.